The next statement that caught my attention in the article was a paragraph that said, the still heated debate revives the question of whether science and religion can ever come together. Yet between these two fronts is a growing movement that says one can have faith in both. This is something you hear very frequently about faith in science, or some people will use the term scientism as though that's like a real thing. I don't know what that means, but what I said is, when I read this, what I thought was, you don't need faith in what's right in front of you. If you can watch a process repeatedly occur, examine it, understand the mechanisms and causes that produce it, how is that faith? Believing my brakes will work is not the same as believing that Hades rules the underworld. My brakes are a calculated risk based on experience with the brakes. Hades is an absolute unknown. I have no first-hand knowledge of Hades or the underworld, only stories. It's an extremely different thing to believe in something with which you have no experience, you cannot examine it, you know nothing about it other than what you've been told, versus believing in something that you work with literally daily. And I've had people use the brakes example repeatedly as, well, you have faith that your brakes will work on your car. And it's like, well, actually, I don't. And in fact, I went through an extended period when I lived up north where I didn't have brakes. I had to drive with my handbrake on for literally like a month. Nobody knows better than me that your brakes sometimes don't work when you get in your car. I know my brakes might not work even though they worked yesterday. I understand it. But I also understand that percentage-wise, brakes are very reliable. And unless there's something really wrong with your car, the brakes are going to work. But yes, you should always be aware that mechanical instruments can fail.
I think it's worth noting too also that this is another example of taking a term that is not well defined, that is used in a number of different contexts, and putting it in a method that makes it seem equal in usage in both contexts.
Okay.
So they're using the word faith. You ask 1,000 people what faith means, you're probably not going to get two answers that are, absolutely identical. But what I tend to look at is, what usage makes the most sense. I think what they're trying to do here, and this happens a lot, like I've mentioned before, how, for example, and I can pull examples right from his book, where Ray Comfort uses the word logic when it's clear that he means common sense. And having gone back and watched some of Star Trek, the original series, there are times when Spock's character also uses the word logic as common sense. It drives me nuts because it's something that the character, you would think, should know better, etc. And here's another example of the term faith being used to say, I have faith in God and I have faith in science and I can have both. Well, what you mean when you say faith in God is not the same thing that you mean when you say faith in science. And on the one hand, when you say faith in science, which if you want to use that term, I don't use that terminology myself because I prefer to avoid the confusion. But I understand that, by and large, most people would use phrases like that. I have faith in science. I have faith the sun's going to come up. I have faith in my brakes. And what you really mean is that you trust that these things are going to occur based on your past experiences, based on reliable, consistent evidence about how the world works. And when you say you have faith in God, it's possible that there are some people who mean the same thing, that for example, they have convinced themselves that they have reliable, consistent, evidence for the existence of God. But this is something that would definitely be unique to that individual and not necessarily shared. We all have understanding of how reality works and how you can look at and find out how brakes works. The idea that you have faith in God, I've said, others have said that, faith is believing something ain't so, and faith is the reason people give when they don't have a good reason. I think faith is the placeholder answer that people stick in when they don't have an answer that they know should be accepted based on reason. And so I think, and this is going to come up several times, that there is a conflict between faith as it's best meant, or most useful in terminology, and reason. And when you say I have faith in science, that is a reasoned faith that is not the same thing.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's interesting because one of the notes